Patrick County Sheriff Dan Smith says that based on the opinion of the county Commonwealth's attorney, his office will not bring criminal trespass charges against anyone floating down the Dan River. Smith was one of the featured speakers during a February 26 public meeting at the Red Bank Ruritan building, where land and water rights of concerned property owners along the Dan River in the Kibler Valley were discussed. The sheriff said his office must rely on the interpretation of Patrick County Commonwealth's attorney Stephanie Vipperman and Circuit Court Judge Martin F. Clark, Jr. because of the vagueness of the law in this area.
The Commonwealth attorney and the Circuit Court judge have made it very clear they've researched this issue in great detail, and they found conflicting circumstances on both sides of the argument. And until those issues are resolved by either legislation or until they're resolved by higher court ruling, the flowing waters of the Dan River will be open to anyone wanting to float down. We, as a law enforcement agency, simply cannot charge individuals with a criminal offense if no law exists. And it is the opinion of our Commonwealth attorney and our Circuit Court judge that criminal trespass does not apply to those flowing waters of the Dan River. Therefore, no criminal charges will be placed by my agency or any other law enforcement agency regarding this matter.
In an opinion shared with the news media, Patrick County Commonwealth's attorney Stephanie Vipperman, and until the tests of navigability and ownership are clarified by the legislature or higher court, county law enforcement officials will not charge anyone with criminal trespass for floating down the Dan River. Vipperman said, however, that her opinion does not limit or prevent a landowner from pursuing a civil action against recreational boaters and fishermen. Vipperman said that Judge Clark believes the Dan River in Patrick County is navigable based on current tests laid out by the court, and that he would dismiss the charge of criminal trespass against any boater for floating down the Dan River. The judge does believe, however, that persons who exit their boats and enter a landowner's private property could be charged with offenses such as trespass or littering, depending on the circumstances, according to Vipperman. Sheriff Smith also said that accommodating a fisherman is an important consideration.
I think it's also important to note that the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries and me, I think that we all want to keep the stream stocked up there for fishing. That's been a precious commodity of this county for decades. And we hope that there can be some type of common ground reached that the fishing will continue. And I know that the intent of the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, after speaking with our supervisor in Link, to keep that fishing open up there. So we're hoping that everyone can be worked with and that these issues can be resolved.
Vipperman said that in her legal opinion that the tests for determining navigability versus non-navigability and private versus public ownership are so varied among the federal and state cases and statutes that it would be a denial of due process to any defendant charged with criminal trespass for floating down the Dan River. The Commonwealth's attorney said that she could not comment on the likelihood of success of a civil action against a recreational boater or fisherman. Smith said the clarity of this issue may never be achieved.
In the legal world, it takes decades for cases to reach the Supreme Court level for rulings to be made. It has to go through all the appellate levels. There even has to be a case to begin with to make that journey. So I don't know if there will ever be a ruling or if there will ever be legislation. It's not up to me at this point. I just have to enforce what laws are there, and if the laws are clearly stated, then we enforce them. If not, then we seek opinions from our Commonwealth attorney, and we determine enforcement action based on that.
Patrick County Sheriff Dan Smith speaking yesterday in a WHEO television